Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. And this is day seemingly forever of quarantine. But with you, as always, I am Aaron, and I'm with Fredo and Dave from All Points in New Orleans. Say hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
And it's there's a lot of news going on, and we call ourselves the Who Dat Jedi podcast. Gentlemen, we need to talk about some Who Dat stuff first, because first of all, well, it still ain't a done deal, but we damn near lost Alvin Kamara. It was like you heard, Obi-Wan Kenobi say, it's as if 1,000 voices cried out in terror and then were suddenly silenced. I mean, that's the way everything was here. What was that? That was Wednesday?
2 days ago. Yeah,
Tuesday. And it was Tuesday, yeah, because the rumor dropped that the Saints were shopping around trading Alvin Kamara. And everybody went, what's a what? I think I saw Fredo's tweet first, and I was like, no, this can't be. And oh my goodness,
it was like the scene in Spaceballs when they hit the evacuation signal. And all of a sudden, everybody's running for the hills.
That's right. The bear was getting in the escape pod. The thing was, I was like, this has to be like either somebody in the Saints office who's just like trying to make themselves feel important, because it's not like they dropped the info to Schefter or Ian Rappaport. They dropped it to some reporter that really nobody knew, But then, some of the reporters we know around town, they start saying, they're doing this. But then I was watching Mike Florio talk about this, and he said what he's hearing was that it was the Saints saying, all right, we'll prove to you that the money that we're offering you, nobody else is going to be able to match it. So they're offering him like good money. And so they said, they started shopping around saying, hey, we'll trade you Alvin Kamara, but this is, this is the money he wants, and this is or we're willing to pay. And then we want a first round draft pick. And people were like, no.
Running backs for go ahead.
Well, the other thing that they were mentioning was that, Alvin Kamara is different than like Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is running every down, and his career is going to be done in, a matter of just a couple of years. Alvin Kamara, because he's not every down, because he also he's also a receiver, he's going to have a longer career and end up making more money than Christian McCaffrey can ever dream of, just not all right up front. So this is when we kind of started seeing the sausage get made, but nobody understands how the sausage is made, But all right, Fredo, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, obviously you had a bunch of people saying the old mantra of you don't pay a running back. The reality, in some ways, the financial realities are going to begin hitting sports teams in every sport, in every league, all over the world right now, because, not having fans, not being able to fill stadiums, not being able to, take all that season ticket money that right now will be in their bank accounts is going to impact their ability to do stuff on the free agent market, sign players, keep players. So we always have to consider, first of all, the dynamics of the sport, but also the dynamics of the economics under COVID. At the same time, I say that, just so we're clear, just about an hour ago, an NFL reporter, Tom Pelissero, with NFL Network's report, says that the Saints are sending an all-out blitz to try to sign Jadeveon Clowney.
Yes, that was the other thing I was going to bring up, because I saw that right before I came in here.
So Loomis math is in full effect. That's what I guess I was going to say. You think he can't do it, he can find the money. So, Dave?
Well, the other big news is that Fournette signed with the division rival, or is about to sign with the division rival in Tampa Bay. So,
well, with all due respect to
every Saints fans are apocalyptic over like everything right now.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, but with all due respect to every LSU fan that listens to this, and every LSU fan I know, we've played Leonard Fournette. When he didn't get much of a game. So, I'm sorry, he's not Superman.
Well, what else? When I saw it, I called it doing the smart Rams. So doing what the Rams did, but smarter. Because what the Rams did is they saw they had a window to hit the Super Bowl, traded a ton of future assets in order to accumulate talent. Well, what the Bucks are doing is they're signing players, they're accumulating talent, but it's just for this year. They're not tethering themselves long
Well,
term.
and the thing was also is that the Kamara and Fournette story both dropped on the same day. So it
Yeah.
did. It made every LSU Saint fan like their head explode. It was like, oh, we get Leonard Fournette. And he's like, if we got rid of Alvin Kamara, I mean, can you imagine what this city would have been like if we would have traded away Alvin Kamara? And I should knock on wood right now.
Yeah, exactly. No.
Sign first. So
I have his jersey in my closet. I do not want to see that happen.
yeah, I know. I got a Jimmy Graham jersey. I got nothing to do with now. So, but so yeah, it was interesting Saints news. It was kind of a nice diversion from the COVID stuff, but. Well, and other Who Dat news, the Saints talked. They're saying they're going to allow fans in the stands third game, so the second home game, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many they're going to let in. I don't. But state of Louisiana and the Saints, money talks. That's what this is. But
they get their guidance on this stuff. At least I've been following this at college a little bit. It sounds like the guidance is coming from public health officials at the local level, and like what number are they comfortable with, in terms of the risk of transmission and everything else. And the number seems to float between like 30 and 15% capacity. So I would say that you could probably expect to see something along those lines.
Can you imagine, though, if you had seats in like the 100 or 300 and they tell you you're going to go sit up in 619 where, Britt and I sit, where it's freezing and it's,
sticky.
And bring your hoodie.
And you're sharing jambalaya with God and Jesus, so...
Well,
it's so cold up there.
It is. My in-laws came to visit. We took them to a Saints game, and my father-in-law was going to wear shorts and a t-shirt, and I was like, "No, dude, no." I said, He's like, "But it's really nice." I was like, "It was like 80 degrees or something like that." I said, "I will still be wearing a thermal, a t-shirt over that thermal, and a hoodie and a jacket over the hoodie, and have gloves." And then he ended up wearing, pants and a little heavy and a little jacket. And he said, "Oh my God, yeah, it's cold up there."
I've covered Saints games from the whatever it was before, the 300 level, I think, and then again once they moved the press up into the rafters, and oh man, it's even colder. Like another few rows higher up in the dome.
We're friends with John DeShazer, and we're joking with him all the time. He said, "Yeah, you wear a stocking cap up there. It's awful." So anyway, so that's Saints news. We haven't had that much Saints news in a long while. And
season's approaching. Actually, what, 12 days? 14 days, something like that.
Miss Gail had COVID, and she's better now. So
yeah, thank goodness.
All right. Well, here endeth unless we have any other Who Dat news.
Nothing broke in the last few minutes, but if we sound clowny in the next hour or so, you'll hear me scream.
We'll let that would be a nice counter. I said it to Britt. I said it'd be a nice counter to Cam Jordan, and she said, "But he's hurt all the dang time." I was like, yeah, well.
Well, you just need it for the playoffs. You only need it for the playoffs.
All right. Well, let's do some trivia to get our start. Now we're all I got you all confused with Saints stuff. Let's get our heads back around Star Wars. All right. Let's see here. Fredo, I'm going to go with you here. What 10-word phrase appears at the beginning of each movie? Oh, I thought this was going to be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, but when you started reading, I was like, what the heck? And then no, it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
That is correct. You know what bothers me about that whole thing? I just noticed this, like one of the last viewings. The ellipsis has 4 dots.
Yeah. Yeah.
That bothers me.
Anybody that writes for a living or grades papers or anything like that is like 4 ellipses.
My wife said that in some cases it is acceptable, and I don't know. We're not going to get into English nerdom here right now, but maybe we'll have her as a guest sometime so she can explain to us the 4-dot ellipsis. But that just bothers me. I don't know. I saw it and I was like, what the heck?
It ain't AP style. I'll say that.
All right, Dave. Who, according to Darth Vader, had allowed himself to be destroyed?
Well, I don't need to hear that again.
Who, according to Darth Vader, had allowed himself to be destroyed?
Oh, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
It is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding,
Because
ding, ding.
it's like, don't let yourself be destroyed. And I'm like, he hasn't been destroyed yet. And then, but as Obi-Wan did. So.
All right, and so mine. Who does Count Dooku greet as my old Jedi friend? Oh man, I'm kind of taking a guess on it. That's got to be Mace Windu. Yeah, it is Mace Windu. Yeah, yay! Hey, we all did good today. All right, so there's our trivia little warm up. So Fredo, what do we got for news this week?
So before we get started with Star Wars news, we'll just pause a moment and extend our condolences to the family of Chadwick Boseman, who tragically passed away last Friday at the age of 43 from colon cancer. He apparently had been battling it since getting diagnosed in 2016. So he's been doing this for 4 years. And if you don't realize that covers the breadth of his time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, making the Thurgood Marshall biopic and a number of other movies, both action and drama. So I think everybody got the same immediate reaction when they read that. It was, what? No, you can't be real. And then when the confirmation happened, I think it hit everybody like a ton of bricks.
Totally thought it was just internet rumor, as totally expecting, a press release of no, the tales of my death is, greatly exaggerated, but no, sadly it wasn't. So, and 43, is that right?
43, yeah.
God, I mean, I'm 47, and every time something like that happens, it just makes me go, ugh.
Make the most of your time, that kind of thing. I had the same reaction as you guys, and show our hands, though they can't see our hands on the podcast. Who watched Black Panther this weekend?
Well, yeah, ABC put it for commercial free on Sunday, so I just sat and watched, and it was awesome to see.
I think that was awesome that they did that, by the way. I mean, that's just for the kids and, any number of people who haven't been able to watch that movie over the last couple of years or even ever, just to see the impact of this performer and this particular performance. It's just...
I remarked to somebody that I had to go back and I remember the little moment at the climax of Captain America: Civil War when he delivers the line to Zemo of, vengeance has consumed you and vengeance is consuming them in Captain Iron Man. Then it says, I'm done letting consume me. And you could see him acting every emotion that's going through that character's head at that moment. And it hits the note perfectly. And then you just realize, wait a minute, he never told anybody. Like Ryan Coogler, his director of Black Panther, had no idea. The majority of the cast of people whom he grew close to, whether it was Michael B. Jordan or Danai Gurira, had no idea. So it kind of shows you, I mean, he was still actively getting treatment for it, and then going to film sets and doing press junkets and, traveling the globe to do all this stuff. And he was still meeting all his obligations, which is why nobody knew anything.
Yeah, we didn't watch Black Panther this weekend because, well, we watched it not too long ago, but also we're still addicted to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So almost done with season 3. But no, my favorite, first of all, I think Black Panther is one of my favorite Marvel movies. That and Captain Marvel, those are the two that I think Brittany and I really latch onto the most. But I think he is one of my favorite characters. There's I don't know, you see Tony Stark doing the things as Iron Man for sometimes purposes that are very selfish. You see all the characters kind of do it for, there's always a selfishness to it, it seems like, but not so much with Black Panther, not so much with T'Challa. But
Yeah.
the things that I've been running through that are my favorite moments of his, first of all, is in Endgame when they all come out of the portal.
Mhm.
When they whatever, I'm not going to even try to do the chant right now, but that's a goosebump moment. But then I still think about that Saturday Night Live sketch where he's on
Oh.
Black Jeopardy.
Black Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Oh,
McConkey.
no,
Karen.
Karen.
Yeah, Karen's lame
McConkey.
potato salad with
Keep your
raisins.
breath.
McConkey.
Potato salad to yourself. That was look. That's the thing. I remember that when everybody kept sharing. I'm like, when that initially happened that weekend, that for the next 2 weeks, everybody just kept quoting it and referencing it, which kind of tells you that it hit at the right moment in the zeitgeist. That everybody saw it and just went, "I know what you're talking about," and it's hilarious, and it was perfect.
People are called Karens now.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel bad because my mom's name is Karen, so luckily she's not a Karen, so
Yeah.
All right, yeah,
But
and
he had so much morality and charisma. I mean, like Michael B. Jordan was just like popped off the screen, and everyone was drawn to that performance. And I remember everybody just gushing over that and talking about how sympathetic he was as a villain and everything else. But man, Boseman sold me in Civil War. Like, just this is incorruptible man who understands right and wrong. And when I watched Black Panther again over the weekend, one of the lines that just like hit me like a ton of bricks was he visited his father on the astral plane, and his father talks about being a king and how difficult it is, and he's like, it's very hard for a good man to be king.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'll just mention right quick that I read an interview Ryan Coogler did with the LA Times where he mentioned that they were talking about it because he says, look, I didn't cast him. I inherited him from Civil War. So since he had been cast for that role then, he was coming on board for Black Panther. But when they started talking about the character of Killmonger and whatnot, it was actually Chadwick Boseman who came up with the idea of the line that Killmonger delivers at the end about him being buried at sea. He said, oh, maybe, he'll want to be buried here in Wakanda, return home. And Chad was like, no, he's going to be, somebody who will not want to be held in captivity and bondage. And so that's where that line came from, talking about it with the director. And he's like, he was struck by it and just like, I have to put that in the movie. And of course, it's in the movie and it's an epic final line. So
it's I will say it's. I saw the thing that's been going around. People are saying, okay, so what's going to happen with Black Panther, moving forward? Mm-hmm. And I would be totally on board with Shuri.
Letitia Wright.
Yeah,
right.
That would, because of what Chadwick did for little African American boys, is incredible. We've talked a lot about on this podcast about representation and seeing yourself. Little kids could now see themselves as a superhero. Mm-hmm. That would be very powerful if they. But it's
it's an impossible job to try to ask another young actor to step into, because you will be drawing the comparisons impossibly. Here's the thing. There's no way. Everybody could say we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We want to do it, but it's impossible. In our minds, in the back of every fan of that movie, they'll be putting in Chadwick. How would Chadwick Boseman have done that role? So it's almost impossible to try to recast that character. You shouldn't. It's a lot better just to try to find a different dynamic. And asking Letitia Wright to step into and lead the franchise would be a tall order. I don't doubt that, but at the same time, it's the one that speaks most honestly, and probably it's the best course of action. Of course, we're all talking about stuff that happened. This was not even a week ago, so I'm sure that whatever plans Marvel had, they got thrown up in the air, because T'Challa and Captain Marvel were meant to be the Iron Man and Captain America of this iteration of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They were going to lead it, and that's gone now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so no easy transition from that to out of that story, but I'll try. So I'll mention a couple of quick release dates that got announced this week. First of all, the biggest one was Mandalorian Season 2 was confirmed by Disney Plus to premiere on Friday, October 30th. I imagine that will follow a similar release schedule as both Mandalorian Season 1 as
And
well as Rebels.
everybody's screaming for a trailer. And it's like, have we gotten to the point where we expect a trailer for everything?
A trailer for a TV show? I mean, you can put a couple of ads, and I'm sure we'll get a few. But here's the thing: we know what the Mandalorian is. We're gonna get it. It's not even a question of if we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it. You know, it's good.
What people want to see is they want to see: am I going to see Ahsoka? Am I going to see Rex? Am I going to see Boba Fett? Am I going to see all these rumored things? And I think if Disney was smart, it's like, no trailer.
I mean, here's the thing: do we need to? If they don't put a trailer, will you not see it?
If they don't? But yeah, no, I'm not watching. But yeah, it's like that's my point.
Yeah.
Is that it's going to actually make people like I just can't wait for the 30th now. But so
nobody listening to this needs a trailer. You know what I mean? But
Right.
Yeah, it'd be nice. They're gonna have to release some marketing material at some point, so I'll do it in their own due course, and that's fine.
Next bit of release date that got announced was Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, coming to PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and PC on October 20th. So 10
cool.
days. So 10 days before Mandalorian. If you need something to tide you over, you can pick up Lego Star Wars.
Crap! I'm gonna have to start a paper route. I'm gonna want that game and
the Mario ones,
the Mario stuff that was announced. This is not Star Wars, but that Super Mario or the Super Mario Brothers.
The 64.
No, the Super Mario Brothers where you can play against 35 other people. It's the Super Mario Battle Royale, and then that looked like awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to brush up on my Super Mario on that one.
Yeah, you'd have to establish an appropriate skill level to where you don't just get your clock cleaned by these Mario experts. But all that stuff looks great. I'm surprised, like most about Lego Star Wars, because I think like I'd been kind of scouting it, and most release dates were showing up as like end of the year or next year.
It makes sense just from the standpoint of usually the big release video games come out between the last end of October and right before Thanksgiving. That's
Right.
when you get Madden comes out, Call of Duty comes out, whatever, because it's the start of the holiday shopping season. So
that's right. That's it. It's gonna be, Dad, I want Star Wars Lego for Christmas. Or it's like, I want Star Wars Lego, and the parents can say, well, Christmas is coming up. So
but it's the kind of thing that makes you go, okay, if it was hard to get a Switch when you got it, Aaron, how much harder is it going to be for the holidays?
Apparently then there's a new version coming out, so as always, Aaron's going to be one generation behind on the video game console, but
you'll be on point for a few months.
Whatever.
Yeah,
so,
you'll have one. You won't have to be running from Target to Target. Because I was in Target the other day, there were none to be found. So
hey, by the way,
I figured I'd look, but I didn't see any.
I was at the Target in Metairie, and they did have them actually. Last time I was there. Ironic, but anyway.
And then
I think we've all been watching this, and this again, not Star Wars, but I think we need to dedicate part of an episode coming up to the Netflix series High Score.
Oh yes, we do.
We've been talking primarily Star Wars on this podcast, but we've always said that it's going to be other stuff as well. We've talked about Marvel, but that's a series I think we need to talk about, and just because I was kind of surprised by a few things there. But
I watched the first 2-3 episodes after Dave recommended it, and it's really cool, and it's interesting just listening from the people who how the ideas came from stuff like Pac-Man comes out of a pizza. that kind of thing. You're like,
Yeah,
okay,
you look at a pizza and there
Well-
it is. And the lawyer that inspired Kirby.
and then
Yeah.
and then the
Well,
drop.
the thing for me was that Miss Pac-Man, for example, came out of somebody basically hacking Pac-Man to make different levels because they got
To make it
tired of
harder.
the same maze, and so they hacked it and made it different. Then they ended up getting hired by Midway to create a game. So all right, we'll create Miss Pac-Man.
Yeah, it was those three guys who were dropouts from MIT, and they're like, they were kind of making their ends meet by buying video game machines and just sticking them in the dorm rooms. Problem is, you're talking about MIT, so everybody was figuring out the patterns of how to beat the games. So basically, they were the very first modders, I guess. They took a game, adapted it, and they're like, oh no, we need to keep getting this money, and we're not.
So the last episode, they talked to the guys who created Doom, and that is a fascinating story. I don't know.
Oh, yes,
So-
it is.
Anyway, well, that's another episode coming up.
Yeah,
So
And then last bit of a video game release date is coming September 8th. Star Wars Journey to Batuu for The Sims 4 is going to be released for PC, and it's a game pack, so it's an expansion pack of The Sims. But you get to play as your very own character around Batuu, whether it's for the Resistance, the First Order, the Scoundrels. You get to experience the park and get to interact with characters like Kylo Ren and Rey, and you'll be able to get your own lightsaber and droid. So it's very much it's coming for PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam, so PC. So if you want to expand on, no idea how much it's going to cost, but I imagine since the expansion pack, it's going to be an interesting way to keep that game alive.
It looked fun. Like a lot of people were talking about that. People that can't afford to go to Disney World,
Yeah.
if you can't go to Batuu, like, well, here's your opportunity. So it's kind of a nice thing for that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like it's perfect for a video game like The Sims, where it's less having to do with objectives and goals. It's more having to do with the experience and interaction. So something like that, where it's okay, you get to experience Batuu and get to talk to Kylo Ren, or get to get your own BB unit, that kind of thing. It's gonna be fun for the people. And then you saw they're finally coming out with the legacy lightsabers for Ahsoka,
yes,
and they're gonna change colors.
yep.
So it's gonna be interesting.
Saw Ashley Eckstein actually
At
showing that off on Instagram.
Instagram, right? So anyway, okay. So moving to the next set of story, and actually, okay, maybe kind of bring it back to the more serious. There was an interview that John Boyega did for GQ. Well, it was GQ UK, so the British GQ, and they got into a number of topics, including his activism with Black Lives Matter, the now famous speech that he did, his history, his life growing up as a child of immigrants from Nigeria in the UK, kind of his big break with Attack the Block, and getting picked up by to play Finn. But there's a couple of quotes that I want to just kind of bring up because they deal primarily with how some of the thoughts that we've had regarding the sequel trilogy and how it developed. Because so I'll just go straight from the article. It says, what I would say to Disney is do not bring out a black character, market them to be much more important in the franchise than they are, and then have them pushed to the side. It's not good. I'll say it straight up. So the article says he's talking about himself here, about the character of Finn, who former stormtrooper who wielded a lightsaber in the first film before being somewhat nudged to the periphery. He's also talking about other people of color in the cast, such as Naomi Ackie, Kelly Marie Tran, and Oscar Isaac, whom he calls his brother from Guatemala. He says, quote, like you guys knew what to do with Daisy Ridley. You knew what to do with Adam Driver. You knew what to do with these other people. But when it came to Kelly Marie Tran, when it came to John Boyega, F all. So what do you want me to say? What they want you to say is, I enjoyed being a part of it. It was a great experience. Nah. I'll take that deal when it's a great experience. They gave all the new ones to Adam Driver, all the new ones to Daisy Ridley. Let's be honest, Daisy knows this, Adam knows this, everybody knows this. I'm not exposing anything, end quote.
So yeah, I don't know that any of us like there's a few different ways that we could approach those comments, and I think we're all very sympathetic to John's point of view. I also don't think like we're in a position to necessarily comment in a way that a bunch of black folk here talking about these racial issues. Like it's kind of like it would be silly for us to get too deep into it.
Right.
But like one of the thoughts that I immediately had with this was, which is one of the biggest critiques of Revenge of the Sith and the prequel trilogy, which was how Padme's character got done dirty. And like for a lot of women that was problematic, and for a lot of people that were sympathetic to women that was problematic. And I think like this can kind of fall under the same sort of umbrella for the sequel trilogy. He was marketed, in a certain way that you would think he would be a major player. And it didn't really unfold that way. And, they should have the creative license to do what they want, the filmmakers, but they had 3 movies to, give him some meat to sink his teeth into, and they didn't do it.
So the first thing that came to my brain here is, and I'm saying this in a room, I've given Lucasfilm a lot of money because of just collecting random Star Wars crap. And so I'm if there's a shill for Lucasfilm, it's probably me, but this confirmed what I've said on this podcast a gazillion times. This actually just amplifies the problem of the sequel trilogy, which was the writing. I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to point fingers as who is to blame, but the fact, the way JJ ended that first movie caused Ryan to have to write his movie a certain way, which then and so the way Ryan ended that movie JJ had to, create something kind of out of nowhere. So it's amplifying the fact that there was no collaboration at all when they were creating these 3 movies, and that whoever was supposed to be maybe overseeing that, they either gave them too much autonomy or can't do their job worth a damn to wrangle these people, because somebody has to be sitting there and saying, yeah, Ryan, I get it, but we had this plan for John, and I guess that does that mean that Disney and Lucasfilm had a bigger arc in mind for John Boyega? John Boyega says it does, and so but nobody else has told me otherwise. So I have to believe that he did. They told him and they told us there was going to be this bigger arc. But the way that these 3 movies were put together, there was no place for that character to go. And then we're introduced to Rose in The Last Jedi, which was an awesome character, and I love her, but it was like, but JJ comes in and has to put in more characters, and the more people you put in a room, the less you're going to get noticed. And I still say they should have kicked the original 3 characters, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, and Mark Hamill, out the door after that first movie, because when you bring in those 3 into the room, that glow is going to, cast a shadow over everybody. So, I don't think. The more I think about it, the more, like I said, just it was so. Here's, like I said to you guys, here's the consequences of not having, a traffic cop at Lucasfilm. And again, if you are going to hire me as a musician for your party, get it. It's like, hey, I'm the musician. I know my music. I know how to entertain a crowd. But you know what? Dave's the one's going to say, but Aaron, I hired you and you're going to play Brown Eyed Girl every 10 minutes because my kid likes Brown Eyed Girl and it's their birthday. So you're going to play it. That's what Lucasfilm needed. And they didn't have it. It was just like, we got J.J. Abrams. Yay, write your story. We got Rian Johnson. Yay, write your story. And oh, crap, we got to fix this now. So anyway, I'll shut up now.
No, I was going to say, because two things. First of all, we always got to remember that particularly for Rise of Skywalker, That movie got built on the fly. It was literally being assembled as they were taking off because of the way that things fell apart between Lucasfilm and Colin Trevorrow. That said, the bigger concern or the bigger
Again,
fault
that is a Lucasfilm problem.
Exactly, no, exactly, exactly. Because you have to bring back JJ, you give him no time. But the bigger issue here, and it's one that presents itself a lot of times, is when you don't have sufficient voices and people of authority of color in the creation stage. You hired, first you hired 3 white dudes to write and direct these movies. Okay,
Yeah, the story group though is pretty diverse.
but my point is, JJ's coming in and he's coming with his own ideas and he's going to favor them. Rian Johnson came in with his own ideas and he's going to favor. And look, I'm not saying you have to be a black person, only a black person can write for a black character. That's not what I'm saying at all. Just like I, as somebody who's Hispanic, Latino, of Nicaraguan descent, I'm not the only person to be able to write for somebody of my ethno group. At the same time, though, when you start the process with only a particular demographic or a particular set, the natural inclination is going to be, let's favor the characters I like. Which characters does JJ like? Rey and Kylo. So he's given them the bulk. Which characters did Ryan, Kelly, I was going to say, Rose is a Rian Johnson creation. And there was always the apprehension of that, when JJ came back, well, he didn't really like Rose. He didn't have anywhere for her to go. So he just kind of pushed her to the side. But he's also creating, and then he's giving more meat to the Rey aspect of the story. Because what's interesting is you had the 3 characters. You had you had Rey, you had Finn, you had Poe at the start of Force Awakens. And they all get their own storylines in Last Jedi. But by the end of Rise of Skywalker, Finn is a glorified second banana. He's the comic relief. If you want to compare it to another fantasy sci-fi property, he's what happened to Gimli in Lord of the Rings. He just becomes a comic relief for that movie. Poe gets demoted to a guest starring role in that movie. He's in it, but he's not doing much of anything that doesn't happen. I mean, yeah, there's a scene in the car with what's her name, with
Zori Bliss.
Yeah, with Zori Bliss, where you learn a little about him. But again, they're both subservient to Rey's story at this point. So when John's saying all these points, is what he's saying is, where was my story? I mean, the very first shot that anybody ever saw of new Star Wars was Finn rising out of the sands of Jakku, stunned and scared. And at that moment, we went, "What? What's going on here?" And he had an arc in Force Awakens, which tells you, hey, JJ liked this character. He had something to say about his character. He had his whole storyline that he took through when he went on his quest with Rose in Last Jedi.
No, that was the same arc as in The Force Awakens.
Exactly,
the same arc as The Force Awakens. So it doesn't even count as a storyline.
And then what does he do for Rise?
What's he say?
What does he do with Rise of Skywalker?
Not much anything.
He's along for the ride.
All of a sudden, he's a Jedi. I mean, so
he's not even a Jedi,
but not on film.
Yeah,
but my point being it though is that again, this is amplifying the problem. That Lucasfilm shot themselves. They only have themselves to blame on this, But again, it's like I get that a director, writer should be able to write the story. You like I said, you hired me to write a story, but I'm thinking back to when the days of Bach and Mozart, when you had a patron, you wrote music. Handel wrote music, the Royal Fireworks for a boat party. Or that was water music. I'm sorry. He wrote the Royal Fireworks for a fireworks display. I mean, he was writing music not for his own creative, wonderment, but because he was hired to write music for a specific purpose. And so Lucasfilm, if you're going to hire these people, say, and Rian Johnson, I'm sorry, but you're the second one in the door. We've got these characters, and so maybe no, we don't need DJ. Maybe no, we don't need to monkey around with Praetorian guards because we've got these we've got these Knights of Ren that we teased here. Sorry, these are the tools you're given. And so yeah, give them autonomy, but you got to also set up some parameters because, like I said, this is.
But I still think it's the kind of stuff that you always have to figure. We're all fans of representation. We speak about it. We champion it. It can't just be in front of the camera. It has to be behind the camera. It has to be in the writing room. It has to be in the special sets. In the costume design, in every aspect of creation. Because
and again, I agree with you. Yes, you're right. But I'm sorry that the story group. I'm sorry. I'm mad about the story group because that is a diverse group of people, Fredo, and so those people should be saying.
They don't have enough power.
I mean, they should have the power to say that. They should.
Well, we're gonna So just to jump off of this one and include the next story because
I'm not done though. I'm not done.
Go ahead.
I gotta say, I'm ticked off because, like, all right, so I got to be honest with myself and I got to be honest with everybody here because when I went into Rise of Skywalker, I said, well, I don't have any expectations. I just want some big splashy movie, right? We got a big splashy movie. But I wasn't being honest because if I was being honest, I wanted some kind of resolution for Finn because he was my favorite character in Force Awakens and he just got kind of pushed to the side for Last Jedi. So I put my hopes in Rise of Skywalker to resolve that storyline, and it didn't happen. And what makes me insane about it is that the story that the director and the writer came out with after the movie had been released was like, oh well, he's force sensitive. That was what he was trying to tell Rey. How are you supposed to discern that from anything?
I thought it was I love you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most people thought that. And so it's like, well, what is he trying to tell her? You shouldn't have to explain that after the fact. And if they had just given him 30 seconds of screen time of him like force pushing somebody,
But again, we have to have Claude fixing the Millennium Falcon without any hands. We have to have the alien giving them secret plans. We've got to have Zori Bliss. We've got to have Babu Frick. I'm sorry, but it's like it seems like JJ came in and was like, all right, what's all the other new stuff that I can put in here? Because he said he's making it up on the fly. You're right. And so, okay, let's just put in a bunch of magic tricks. I'm sorry, Dave, I interrupted you. You're right. You're absolutely right. That it's just, if they would have actually,
what if they'd done a callback to the first movie? The end of the first movie is so powerful when Rey pulls the saber away from Ren. She calls the saber and catches it, and the Force theme swells. What if they had done a callback to that with Finn this time? People would have lost their crap. They would have loved it. And, it's just like, Boyega's got a point. And, I'm with you, Aaron. I'm a big Lucasfilm fan. I love this whole universe. That's why we talk about it every week. But it just they could have done so much more with his character, and they didn't.
And to Fredo's point, you're absolutely right, Fredo, about people of color, people of women being in those places of decision making and power in the creation process. Because that's one thing I noticed online. I was actually talking with Ben Hart, who is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld. We were having a Twitter conversation just in DMs. And because he tweeted something, he said, sometimes just better you don't have to opine on everything. And I replied back, I said, yeah, with this whole John Boyega thing, there was a lot of white people telling him how he should feel. And it's like that, that's, that was also very frustrating during that day, because you're right. Whether or not it was intentional by Lucasfilm or it was intentional or anything, this is the way John Boyega feels, and it needs to be recognized and it needs to be dealt with. And I mean dealt with from a Lucasfilm standpoint of saying, it's probably, like you said, a bunch of white people who just had blinders on and didn't think we were hurting, anybody's feelings. And that's the way it happens. you know.
Well,
And
I'll say one other thing. I don't think John would have brought this up in the way that he has if he hadn't have heard that kind of feedback from fans.
yeah,
No, and just to say right quick, because I mean, you got to think about. I mean, put yourself in his shoes. He got the opportunity of a lifetime. Think back when the very first trailer drops, and the first thing that we see afterwards is his own reaction, jumping over his own couch, high-fiving his friend, going, "Come on, let's go." I mean, he's elated by it. He's excited by it. This is, his life is going to change forever because of it, and it has. In ways both positive and not so positive. So he has every right to feel the way he does because of the way that things shaped out. But and then recognizing those feelings are correct. Are correct for him because he has a every leg to stand on to say, "Look, you told me I was going to do this. I came in and did this, and it didn't come out that way." That doesn't mean that the movie's bad. That doesn't mean that he's not grateful for the opportunity. Which the other thing is he gets a lot of backlash from people whenever he criticizes some aspect of it. And I'm like, he has every right to speak about his experiences. Not everybody wants to hear what he says. Everybody wants to hear, "Oh, it was a wonderful experience. It was great. I love these people." And on a personal level, I'm sure he loves every member of the cast and crew. But that doesn't mean that his experience was so tremendously positive that it overrides the stuff that happened to him at the end.
The fans telling him how to react, I suspect a lot of that comes from a point of view of them desperately wanting that relationship to be good. They want the relationship between Boyega and Lucasfilm to be good so that he can reprise the role. And so I think that's where that comes from. Because if he's out here bashing Lucasfilm every other week, at some point they're just going to say, "To heck with this guy."
Well,
But listen to the man's feelings. He has a right to speak his mind, and you can't tell him not to do that.
What this does to Disney is it makes all of their progressiveness look forced and look intentional in a bad way, like performative. Thank you, that's the word. Yeah. And when I worked at Google, one of the first things they taught us was they said assume positive intentions. So if somebody it's like somebody sends you an email, don't read into tone or anything. Or if somebody does something, your first, it's kind of like what I learned when I was a band director from somebody said, be nice first, right? So you'd like I said, you'd like to think that Disney wouldn't do that just to be performative, but this is what it makes it. That it certainly now makes the room smell that way. So, Fredo, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No. I was just gonna just add because it's regarding the fans. I mean, I hope that is. Unfortunately, some of the fans know fan bases as big as Star Wars are varied, and a lot of people come at it from points of views that you and Dave and I would not agree with. It's same thing as being a Saints fan. There's Saints fans, who you'll cheer with Sunday afternoon, and Monday morning you'll come out and you'll read something from there and go, "I can't believe we share the same planet." So
you're right.
That's the reality.
I was doing what Aaron was just
trying to look at exactly.
Assuming the best of people. Yeah.
But
but let me finish right quick.
No, go ahead.
Just simply to say, but I think at every point, whenever somebody in John's position is telling you, "This is what I'm experiencing," we should give them that benefit. We should say that is valid. Much in the same way that Kelly Marie Tran responded to the stuff that she got hurled at her by some of the nastier sides of the fan base. And she had every right to say, "Look, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up to be in Star Wars. I thought this was going to be the greatest thing ever. And look, now I'm having to run to the hills."
Now, the thing is, though, is that in this article, for the most part, John was not swinging at the fans.
No,
he was swinging at JJ. He was swinging at Ryan. I mean, he was calling names, and he was swinging at Disney, and Lucasfilm. So it was also, people were very quick to blame it on the fans as well.
Yeah.
When this is, he's calling it. He said, no, it's, these were decisions that were made by writers and directors and by executives, and I got hosed. You
Yeah,
know,
and
so
it's interesting. It's interesting. Not to
the fans are a whole different other
right.
category.
Right. I mean,
Different
the article.
conversation.
Yeah, the article brings up the fans for a moment, but his quotes are directly aimed at what happened in the creative process and the output. You know, I got hired for this. This is what we did. This when stuff changed, and this is what came out. And then ultimately, oh, and Disney wants me to come out and act, you know, like I'm happy with everything the way it went down, and I wasn't. But I couldn't say it because you know that would be probably he probably hit with a bunch of non-disclosure stuff in that moment.
Here's a fun little project that if Brittany Williams and Daniel Jose Older are listening, maybe it'd be fun to reverse engineer the sequel trilogy, and let's start with The Rise of Skywalker and then start writing backwards so that we can make a storyline instead of starting at The Force Awakens and trying to write our way forward. What would it be like to take, knowing how this thing ends, and okay, now how did we get here in a more logical sense? That just might be kind of a fun quarantine thing to do. So again, if they're listening, we can all hang out on my porch and drink some beer and wine and just speculate, you know, off the record. So anyway.
So okay, so not to cut this off, but moving real quick, actually speaking about women in positions of power, because Kathleen Kennedy did a major interview for The Wrap, I believe. Yeah, it was for The Wrap a couple of weeks ago. So they got into it with her regarding The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda and all the other stuff that came in there. But then they also start discussing the future of Star Wars because, you know, Mandalorian and Kenobi and Cassian Andor are the primary stuff that's coming out. So she kind of says, look, she first of all confirmed that Kenobi is only going to be a limited series. That's it. It's only going to be about 6 episodes and not go beyond that. But then discussing the future of the franchise, which, you know, we know that there's movies already on the slate coming out. Here are her quotes when discussing about where things stood as far as the franchise is going. He says, now we're stepping back. Stories have been told within this universe over the last 40-odd years, and there's now the realization that this is a mythology that actually spans about 25,000 years when you really start to look at all the different stories that have been told, whether it's in books and games. We just need the time to step back and really absorb what George has created and then start to think about where things might go. That's what we've been doing. We've been having a great deal of fun doing it and meeting with lots of different filmmakers and talents. There's so many fans out there and so many filmmakers that have been influenced by Star Wars for so long that it's a fantastic opportunity to get a sense of who wants to be a part of this. So that's what we've been doing, end quote. Which, before you jump in, shouldn't that have been the first thing they should have been doing?
Disney wanted, you know, they wanted, you know, something to show for their money. The thing that came to my mind, and I heard this on another podcast as well, they had the similar thought, is this sounds like somebody who's coming towards retirement saying, you know, somebody else is going to be heading the ship here in a year or two, and we need to let them figure out where they want to go with it. That's kind of what, but Fredo, to your point, yes. And after that whole long thing that we just got done yelling about, that's exactly right. I think the whole sequel trilogy, you said that, you know, The Rise of Skywalker was done on the fly. I think this whole sequel trilogy was kind of done on the fly, you know, without.
Well, they locked into release dates and then they went from there.
Yeah.
You know, it was fun listening to an alternate perspective on this stuff when we were talking to Bill a couple of weeks ago, and he was just talking about how, you know, do the movies all need to interconnect? Do they all need to flow seamlessly? Does it have to make, you know, logical sense for us fans who follow this stuff nearly religiously? I mean, sure, that's what we want. But, you know, your average moviegoer, maybe it's less of a big deal. And, you know, Disney at the end of the day is just trying to make money. You know, we'd like the two things to kind of coexist, you know, quality content and them making their money. But sometimes one consideration beats out the others. You know, I don't know. I just that, you know, stepping back from it and looking at it big picture wise, it's like yeah, of course we're going to obsess over it on a Star Wars podcast and talk about like, could they do this better? Yes. Here's how they could do it better. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's still they're generating so much money and mostly good reviews, and everyone loves Mandalorian and where that's headed. And
Let's also remember that, you know, Lucasfilm, okay, when Star Wars was made, you know, Lucasfilm was one guy.
Mhm.
It was George Lucas.
Lucas's film.
Right. And then, you know, of course, ILM comes to be. And then eventually you get Skywalker Sound. Now Lucasfilm is not just a place where that, you know, is they make George Lucas's Star Wars movies, but it's places where people go to get their special effects done in their videos. It's become, what I'm getting at is that it has become this bigger machine and this bigger monster. And having worked for, you know, a large company, it was amazing to me how little this team, you know, didn't know what that team was doing. You know, I guess I'm not, you know, I'm not an employee there anymore, but well, no, I'm just going to stop. But it was like, there's people who are like, oh, you're making that because we're making this over here. You know, it's like, don't you think you guys should have talked, you know? You know, but you know, sometimes
you're right, Aaron. That happens everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, like,
every workplace I've ever been in, where it's like, you don't know that person. Well, that person does something that directly influences your job, and yet you've never talked or met or anything. You know, it's wild.
Yeah, look, I work for a university here, and you know, I'm in the same building as the dean. I don't go up to the dean's floor. I've said more than 10 words to the guy, so that's the kind of thing. You know, I'm sure it gets 10 times bigger when you're talking about places like Lucasfilm or Google.
So when I was a band director, you know, when I first, like my second job, actually my first two jobs, I was the band director. Well, first of all, actually my first job, I was the band director from grade 5 through grade 12. So it was like, it was all my decisions. I could have my thoughts. This is where I want my kids to go, and these are this is the resources I'm going to use. These are the tunes I'm going to play. Blah blah blah. It was one car, you know, and one person driving that car. When I went to my next job, I was the only one at the high school, but there were 2 middle school band directors. So now it's like, yeah, I can make my own decisions at a high school level, but that has to be in conjunction with what they're doing at the middle school level, and not just at the middle school level, but at each middle school. And, you know, then there are elementary teachers, you know, even beyond that. And then I got an assistant band director. And so now so it becomes such a mess. And it was probably my point is that when George was making the first 3 movies, it was his idea, it was his story. And only thing, I just need you to direct it, you know, but here's the story. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like now, JJ, come in and write the story and direct it. It was George wrote it, gave it to, you know, Irvin Kershner or, you know, Richard Marquand, and you guys direct it, but this is the story, you know.
And if you got questions, I'll be in the back.
Right. You know, so it's become such a thing. And then when you add in all the books, like she said, that have been written, all the games have been made and everything like this. So yes, Fredo, they should have from the get-go sat down and tried to figure all that out. But now I think it's just like the warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones, that I don't even think you're going to be able to know that, you know.
But I guess to my point is, and it kind of brings forth to what you're saying, when Lucasfilms began around Star Wars, it was a small, lean company that was trying to figure stuff out on the fly. I guess that's going to be my term for today. Just figuring things out as best they could, because a lot of the stuff wasn't invented. They were creating it. Now, Lucasfilms is some huge machine in part of a bigger machine that's called Disney, or the Walt Disney Company. So no, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if you have to make changes, such as, oh, the director that we hired has to be removed, or we're not working, we're not meshing, we're going to throw everything out, bring somebody else in. You can't do that on the fly anymore. You can't make those changes. Now, if you're making a change, whether it's Rise of Skywalker or Solo or Rogue One, you're literally turning an aircraft carrier. You're
But
trying
however,
to do one at a time.
where that kind of worked, though, it worked better with Solo because Kasdan was the one that wrote it. They just needed to get somebody behind a camera to direct it. You know, that's where it got thrown off in the sequel trilogy, at least with The Rise of Skywalker, is because
They were tied. It was tethered to the other two.
I mean, you're getting
Solo
Jake
by
and
itself.
Rose.
Right.
I think what Lucasfilm needs to focus on not is just absorb all the things that George has done and, you know, and try to figure it all out. They need to decide what is it that we do well and what is it that we want to keep doing well. And I think they're becoming almost, and I often thought about this back in the 90s with LucasArts and with, you know, everything else. It's like they started to become jack of all trades, master of none.
Mhm.
You know, they used to be, well, I mean, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi were three of the most, you know, cutting edge, you know, special effects movies. You can't say that about a Star Wars movie anymore.
Not anymore. Every week you're getting a major release, or in normal years you're getting a major release that's got as many special effects, if not more, than the original trilogy had.
So now maybe you could say then, you know, they really had a handle on storytelling, unlike other movie franchises, you know, but you know, they've kind of lost their way on that one a little bit. You know, as far as a multi-movie story arc, I mean, each one of Force Awakens is a great movie. You know, Last Jedi is a great movie. Rise of Skywalker, it's fun. But I mean, they're good stories, but they just don't work. So I think Lucasfilm needs to, again, figure out what is it that we want to do and to be the best at.
I think they're starting to do that. I mean, like in the sense that they see Mandalorian as just like this unqualified success, and they're leaning into that, the lessons they've learned from that. Figure out a way.
That was a stable project from the get-go, though. You know what I mean? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
But there's multiple levels to that. Like, you know, you talk about like the creative forces behind it were very stable, and they had a clear vision, and they decided they wanted to see that vision through. Right? That's a lesson you can take from that. I think some of the lesson that they're taking from that, though, as well, is like these smaller scale standalone stories are where we seem to be hitting the mark more often. And if you don't hit the mark, you shrug and you move on, you know, and like, oh, well, Solo didn't, you know, make enough money, so we'll just, you know, abandon that and we'll move on to something else. Rogue One made a ton of money. Oh, well, maybe we do another standalone movie, but not necessarily set in the same timeline. Mandalorian is a great show for us. This standalone, small-scale property. We should do more shows like that. We're gonna do Kenobi. We're gonna, you know, do Cassian. So, like, I see the roadmap, or at least sort of the outline of the roadmap. But I mean, I'm with you. Like, eventually, you're gonna have to get past like small-scale storytelling at some point, because they invested so much money in the property.
But, and I'll say, I know, and I agree with you 100%. I think, and in some ways, that's part of what I think they're learning. They're sitting together and they're adapting to say, what is Star Wars and what can it be beyond the roadmap that George Lucas gave us? Because George Lucas gave us 2 trilogies. Well, we just made a trilogy. Okay, can we do more with it? Yeah, we can do TV shows. We can do standalone movies. We can do book series. We can do video games. We can do whatever we want with it. But how does that take shape on a grander scale? How does that take shape? And look, I thought the Star Wars story idea is excellent. They dumped it after Solo, which I don't get, because it gave them an opportunity to kind of go off script, if you will, kind of do something unique and different. You're not tethered to, oh, geez, if this doesn't tie all stuff together, we got to figure it out in the next movie. If you want to do a next movie, if, say, for example, if the cast of Rogue One had lived through that movie and we wanted to tell another story with them, they could have done it. You know, there's nothing saying you can't, but the point is, you're not bound by, oh, no, this is part of a larger saga. In some ways, I think part of what Kathleen Kennedy was saying is the idea of we can now close the chapter on saga telling. and we can just start going off and telling all kinds of different stories. She's talking about 25,000 year period. That's the Star Wars mythos, so to speak. So you can go to the High Republic, you can go to the Old Republic, you can go further into the future than we've ever been. So you're not tethered now to, okay, we at some point we got to bring back Chewbacca, the Millennium Falcon, R2, 3PO, those kinds of things. You can go wherever you want, but what does that look like? And I think that's the, when you're presented with so many options at the buffet, you don't know where to start first. And I think that's what they're kind of trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think it's what I just started. My mind started wandering a little bit, but it got me to the question of, again, we've tackled before, is how do you know it's a Star Wars movie?
Mm-hmm.
And and to me, yeah, I think that's what Lucasfilm needs to grapple with is, and that's what Kathleen Kennedy was saying, is what makes Star Wars, and that's a tough thing to wrestle with, even for the people who have created it. But yeah, you're absolutely right, though. That's what they should have been doing at the get-go. It seems to, again, reverse engineering. It seems to me that it's like, all right, here's a Star Wars trilogy should be one movie in 3 parts. What are those 3 parts? At least the bullet points. What are we hitting on each one of those? And then if you stick to the story, then everything else is going to work. You're not going to have a situation to make John Boyega feel the way he feels. You're not going to run into, like I said, the painting into a corner type of a deal, because you're going to see the path ahead of you. It seemed like they were just getting in the car and driving. It's like, all right, we're in Shreveport. All right, which way should we go now? Let's go that way. And then you drive until you run out of gas. Where are we? We're in Oklahoma City. All right, well, where do we go now? Let's go that way. And then you drive until you run out of gas and you're at that place. That's the way the sequel trilogy feels. Whereas the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy feels like you can tell where this arc is going. Or this whole road trip is going. So anyway,
I agree with most of that, but I will say this too. Like, we said this like when we were ranking the movies. If you stick the landing, I'm going to forgive a lot of what comes before that.
Big time.
And they didn't stick the landing. They just didn't. And so
yeah, but it's tough to stick the landing when the person who's supposed to be spotting you throws a medicine ball at you.
We can talk. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about all the reasons why that movie didn't work. They're rushing through it. They didn't have a good plan. All these things, but it's like at the end of the day, if that movie had been good and had a satisfying conclusion to our main characters' arcs,
it's football, man.
We would have loved it.
Winning solves all your problems. It's like if your team is winning, nobody cares how many times you fumbled. Nobody cares how many penalties you got. If you won the game, you're the best. So you're right. You're absolutely right on that.
And I was just going to say right quick, and perhaps one of the harder parts for Star Wars and Lucasfilms to manage is they're not the only game in town anymore. Used to be, when the movies came out, they were Star Wars and everybody was trying to copy them. Now you have Marvel, you have DC, you have Lord of the Rings, you have Star Trek, you have all these other properties that are doing quality work that are challenging them. And so if they don't, they're going to get juxtaposed against. Everybody did it. We've done it. In the same year Rise of Skywalker comes out, Avengers Endgame comes out, and we're saying, hey, this one did it better, that kind of thing. And that's only going to amp up the pressure on them to be forward thinking.
Another topic for another podcast would be did Marvel set themselves up to fail in this phase 3 that is coming out, or phase 4, whatever, this next set of are people going to be as hyped for this next set of movies as they have the previous? But anyway, that's for another time.
We'll see. But anyway, that's it for the news, and that was a lot of news.
That was a good discussion, though. That was fun. I got fired up. I didn't swear once. I don't know. All right. Well, so tonight, our main topic for tonight is just something we were kicking around. There was a YouTube video that went around of deleted scenes that should have stayed in, deleted scenes from the saga, and it kind of got us talking about, what do we think about these deleted scenes? And actually, we had a kind of interesting discussion even today. It's like, how do you get, how do you have a discussion of like, wow, this scene, Dave and I were kind of disagreeing a little bit. It's like, this really sucked. It's like, how do you have a discussion about that? Because obviously George thought it sucked because it was removed from the movie. But it's like, it's just, but there are some, scenes get cut because either for timing or they've already, and that's one of the things I struggle with. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through our favorite, or we're doing a favorite deleted scene that we maybe could have said, yeah, this should have stayed in, for each trilogy. We're not going to go each movie, but for each trilogy. So this is going to be an abbreviated version. And then we'll have at the end of it a little bit of a potpourri of if you have one that like really stinks that you want to, point out, or, and I guess that was the thing that was struggled for me, is that a lot of the scenes that are deleted, they're cool, but they figured out a way to get that same information out in a more expedient way, right? There's quicker way you can get people from point A to point B. So it's kind of tough to say, yeah, that seemed to be great, because if you put it in the movie, then then does that mean the other one goes away where they tell us that information? It's my problem actually with putting in the Han and Jabba scene in A New Hope, because all that information is the conversation between Han and Greedo.
Right.
It's like the exact same conversation, but the only reason we put in Jabba the Hutt is because he wanted to put in Jabba the Hutt. But now that it sticks out like a sore thumb, because it's like, we already heard this, we already heard this same dialogue. So anyway, but we're going to be going, like I said, through each trilogy and our favorite deleted scene. So I guess who wants to start this one out? Anybody want to volunteer their first one? So we're in the original trilogy. I guess I'll go ahead and do
Okay.
mine.
All right.
The one I want is the one of Luke Skywalker putting his lightsaber together
In Return of the Jedi?
in Obi-Wan's hut. First of all, Dave, have you read, or either one of you read Shadows of the Empire?
Long time ago.
So I mean, part
time
of that, I mean, Luke is doing his Jedi training
Mm-hmm.
at Obi-Wan's hut, and then I want to think, I don't know if I'm making this up. I'd have to go look into, maybe I should look in the Return of the Jedi novelization. I believe that, I mean, they talk about this, the same thing, but that just seems to me to be would have been a really interesting thing. And I don't think it would have taken away from the surprise where Luke's about ready to get pushed in the Sarlacc pit and the lightsaber comes flying out of R2-D2, because you would have been going, even though you would have seen Luke put his lightsaber inside R2 in Ben's hut, you could have cut it in a way that it's like, oh my gosh, he's going to get thrown in the Sarlacc pit, and then here comes R2, and you go, oh yeah, okay,
McClunky.
it's going to get real. Oh, sorry, McClunky there. So I mean, that's the one I picked. I think that would have been. Plus, it would have established. I mean, the first time we see Luke as a Jedi was when he's choking Grimorian guards.
Well,
I mean,
and I think part of the reason why I think you're right in regarding that scene. First of all, I love the cut from that moment when Vader leaves Jar on the deck of the Death Star, and he goes to his hibernation chamber, and he's just calling for Luke through the Force.
Yeah.
And now what Luke is doing is finishing the lightsaber, because that moment gets referenced later on when Vader's holding the lightsaber and says, "You built a new lightsaber."
yeah.
So the fact that the payoff was in the movie, but the setup will get cut out, I'm like, okay, it works, but I think it fits better at that point.
So yeah, that's
All
my
right.
vote. That's the one I think that should have stayed in and could have stayed in.
Dave,
I hope we're not. Yeah, I hope we're not boring here, because that was the same one for me. And there's two things going on there. I like the where you talked about like referencing his Jedi powers and sort of seeing that he has progressed at this point. And like, for us when we watched it, we were much younger. We were looking for some excitement in the theater. And all we'd seen to that point was just sort of Vader hanging out on a star or on the Death Star. And then, after that, it was just some people talking, and then C-3PO and R2-D2. C-3PO and R2-D2 walking through the desert. There's just, you're kind of itching for something interesting to happen at that particular moment in the movie. So I think that it would have really added something on that level. And also, I agree with you about spoiling the surprise and how it really wouldn't have, because I read interesting. I think it was an interview with Ian Fleming, or it was somebody affiliated with the Bond series, and like they were asked about the ejector seat in particular from the car back in the day, and it was like, I didn't want us to reveal that early in the movie, but they were exactly right that you do that because you tell them what to expect, and then the excitement comes in the eventual reveal, the anticipation. It's kind of like Hitchcock, you're waiting. The anticipation is what gets you. So you're like, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And then you get to see it happen. And it makes the audience feel like they're in on something. They're smart, and all these things. There's a lot of good reasons to do it. So yeah, I mean, like, that was just good. It was good. It's the runaway favorite for me.
Okay, so for me, actually, I'm going with Empire. The scene between Luke and Leia in the medical center after he gets out of the Bacta tank. It's only a small moment. First of all, two things. Lucas and Leia are talking, and they almost kiss before C-3PO comes and interrupts them, which I love the fact that C-3PO is blocking everybody from kissing Leia.
No, I was thinking the same phrase, but I was going to say it out loud. Okay.
Yeah, well, I make sure of myself.
The rooster blocking, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But also, it sets up the payoff of the kiss later on when Han and Chewie show up. The bigger point, though, is this is when Luke tells Leia that he's going to have
Fredo just wants more incest in his Star Wars. That's what he wants.
Look, Game of Thrones ruined me. But
sorry.
No, actually, no. The reason why I do want this scene added is because Luke tells Leia he's got to go to Dagobah to train, and Leia gets upset with him, gets mad at him because it's like, wait a minute, Han just told me he's got to run off to go pay off his debt to Jabba the Hutt. Now you're telling me you got to run off to go do your Jedi stuff. It's like, when do I get some loyalty around here? So I think the line she says is like, I'd have better luck just going down the hall and getting some loyalty from the Wampas. Which, that moment, in the movie in and of itself is good for what it does. But I love how it highlights their reactions to stuff in the sequels. Because that's the same thing they do when stuff goes to heck in a handbasket. It's Han goes off to be a smuggler again, Luke goes to Mos Espa, and they all leave Leia behind to pick up the pieces and keep the fight going. I think it shows that those aspects of the personality were there way back at the start too.
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten about that scene. That is a good choice. That actually would have created some nice tension, because it always seems like, all right, I'll see you guys later. Okay, see you, Luke. And R2's like, where are we going? It just kind of, we're all just like, oh, okay, they're splitting up. But it is, I could see it like going, man.
Yeah,
we got. You can't go lift weights right now. We need to take care of this other junk, and then you can, go.
You're a commander in the Rebel Alliance. You can't just simply pop off for, a few weeks or months to, go lift rocks.
So how about so we're into the prequel trilogy now, and this one I'm actually going to. I agree totally with I don't know if we have the YouTube channel of where we got this from, but
Let me see if I can find it.
The one that he mentioned for the Phantom Menace was the saying goodbye to Jira, and it's mainly because Jira was the old lady that storm's coming, Annie. That old lady from Scooby Doo that liked Anakin Skywalker. But anyway, as he stops to say goodbye, that's Qui-Gon. Well, first of all, they got one of Darth Maul's probes chasing him, and then Qui-Gon notices it and slices it down. And the reason why I think this should have stayed in is exactly what this guy's YouTube channel said, was because then it explains why they're running. Because they leave Shmi, and then the next thing you see is they're running, and Anakin's like, Qui-Gon, sir, slow down. I'm like, yeah, why is everybody running? And then all of a sudden you see Darth Maul, but they don't tell you why they had to start running in the first place. And seeing this droid would have made the audience go, oh crud, they're being followed. And then it makes sense for them to be running through the desert. So I'm going to agree with the gentleman on YouTube on this one.
The YouTube channel is called AdAd Chat. So
anyway, so
yeah, I'll throw that link in.
So I'm stealing his, but he was right on the money on that one. It was because that was just one of the awkward why are they running moments. And then of course you start fighting with Darth Maul and you don't care. But to begin with, it was kind of unsettling. So Dave, what's yours for the prequel trilogy?
I have several, so I'm going to have some honorable mentions maybe later. But the one to me that jumps out more than any is when Anakin and Padme visit her family on Naboo in Attack of the Clones. It really sort of establishes their relationship in a way that's like 100% better than anything we ultimately got. Everything that we got in the movie eventually felt forced or stilted or unconvincing. It's my biggest critique of the prequels, probably by far. And this particular scene where he and she visit her family, and you get more insight into who she is and her character and what she sees in him and what he sees in her. And there's like lightness to it too. They're kind of poking fun at each other a little bit, but not in an awkward George Lucas way. It's just it's
pretty. I like the way you smell.
Yeah, right. You're smooth. But yeah, no, it's
I don't like sand.
I don't know if I'd go so far as to say like this would have rescued the whole romance, but it would have provided a much more convincing rationale for everything that comes later. And I'd recommend people watch it if they haven't seen it.
Let's you and me wrestle. Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. Watch me ride this cow-looking thing through the meadow. Does it not make me look hot? Anyway, so
John Williams should have totally like stole the Little House on the Prairie theme like during that moment when they're in the meadow on Naboo. Anyway, go ahead, Fredo.
So for me, I'm gonna go to Revenge of the Sith, and it's actually three little scenes that kind of make one big one, and it's kind of the subplot about building the alliance, the Rebel Alliance, that takes place between Bail, Padme, Mon Mothma, and a few other senators. So there's a few little meetings that happen during the middle of that movie that give you the idea that this is the beginning of the birth of the alliance. And in a movie that's crying out for poor Padme to do something productive and proactive, to not just be waiting for Annie to come back or to get news from Annie that he's turning to the dark side before she has to shuffle off the mortal coil. The idea that she's still actively involved, that little subplot feels more in tune with the Padme that we saw in Clone Wars.
Do you think it was removed because George read the feedback of there's too much politics going on in the prequels? Do you think he got a little gun shy? Because I agree with you. That was like, I think that I like that scene, and I wish it would have stayed in. I was actually one of those like people who would complain about too much politics in the prequels. It's like, that's what these movies are supposed to be about, folks.
Right.
It's political intrigue. Sorry, it's all the president's men, but in Star Wars, but I wonder if it was just like, no, we've gone too far down this rabbit hole. I don't know.
No, I think that would have worked well. And realistically, given what we know of the plot, because I mean, Palpatine's plot is all designed around becoming the victim of the Jedi and positioning himself with emergency powers to become the ultimate power broker in the galaxy. So the idea that Bail Organa, Pat Benatar, Mon Mothma are recognizing this, and they're like, well, we don't know how we're going to go forward with this until it's too late. And then they go, okay, we're going to have to do something, behind everybody's backs in order to put it together. I think would have lent some meat to those political moments, because otherwise they just throw away. Here, showing you, no, people were recognizing the threat that Palpatine was. Unfortunately, it wasn't the Jedi, but it was being recognized and it was being seen. Because ultimately, I mean, Revenge of the Sith is about how dictatorships and fascism takes over a democracy, and the idea that everybody just ignores it or doesn't see it is not true. So I love the idea that here we have these characters recognizing the danger, trying to stop it, and then trying to find a way to combat it.
Cool. So on to the sequel trilogy.
Mhm.
And I'm glad I get a start, because this is the scene that of all the movies that have been released, this is the one that they should have gone with. And I'm mad at Rian Johnson for not using this version. This is the alternate confrontation between Phasma and Finn at the end, and I'm going to actually play it. So, but I think with our previous conversation of how Finn got shoved off, this would have given so much more momentum into his arc and given him more of it just was a much better scene. So here we go. Here is and I believe it is called Phasma Squealed Like a Whoop Hog. Yeah. So
Disobedient, disrespectful, traitor!
You call for order. You beat us down. But when your shiny neck was threatened, you squealed like a whoop hog. The evidence blew up at the base, but you and I know the truth. When I put a gun to your head, you shut down Starkiller shields. Now, what would your troops do if they found out? Or your masters?
Who would believe a story like that?
You were always scum.
Rebel scum.
Yeah, I think I like that one better.
oh my God, it's so much better. It's and if everybody, if you haven't seen it, you need to go on. You can go on YouTube, obviously, and find it. But it's in the deleted scenes on the DVD as well, and the Blu-ray. It because she's surrounded by the 4 stormtroopers, and they start looking at each other like, "Oh wow, this did really," and so she wastes them. It was a much. It's like I said, it put much more power into Finn's character there. So. And I just think it should have stayed. It should have stayed. And I don't know why. Yeah, we're talking if you're shaving 30 seconds off of a movie. So I don't know. I'd have to listen to Rian Johnson's explanation, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess if we're good on that, I'll go ahead and give my So for me, it's when in A Force Awakens, when Kylo finds the Falcon and boards the Falcon, and he kind of has his own Luke moment on it. It's like when Luke in Last Jedi gets on the Falcon, he's sitting there and he's sort of reminiscing and he's looking around and taking in the memories. And I like that Kylo had that little moment on the Falcon as well. It adds a little bit of symmetry to the 2 movies. It adds a little bit of symmetry to those 2 characters. Humanizes him a little bit better. You realize, he was this scared kid. I just like it a lot. I don't think it really would have hurt the momentum a lot to have had that in there.
Yeah,
Not-
I think.
We-
Yeah, I think
Yeah, we do know at that moment that Kylo is Han Solo's son. Do we know that for sure?
yeah, because Han and Leia had their hug goodbye,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
he said, "Yeah, bring back our son," that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So-
So I mean that's the only thing that so never mind. I withdraw my concern.
No, because and I was thinking it's a very good moment because you got to figure, as a little child, he probably ran around the hallways of that ship. He sat at that cockpit. He hung around with Chewbacca and the whole nine. So being back there looking to kill Han is a good little moment, kind of juxtaposing everything that's going through his head.
But think about what you just said. Those memories of, even if you would have had just quick little flashbacks too of just
Mhm.
little. But think about then when Chewbacca, shoots him.
Yeah.
I mean that's for because Chewbacca had those same memories. I mean, if you think about taking a bowcaster to your godson, basically. How painful that was for Chewbacca in so many different levels. So I think it would have been a good one. Yeah. And, that's the thing that I wonder, because we're talking about usually these scenes are dropped because they're trying to, save momentum well, first of all, never mind. This is The Force Awakens, so I won't get on Last Jedi. But anyway, but for most movies, it's to keep the momentum going, stuff like that. But when Endgame can be 3 hours long and nobody complains, and one chunk of that movie is Captain America running a support group, then I think you can put Kylo Ren on the Falcon for a couple seconds, So I wonder if people are going to be a little bit less inclined to cut a lot of stuff, because people will, if it's good, people will sit through a 3-hour movie.
And as I said, you don't necessarily want to be making every movie 3 hours, but if it's a moment that adds to the story, you can withstand. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, everybody sat through 3 hours of Endgame. Nobody was complaining through, at the end, because like you were saying, like they were saying, you remember the ending, and that ending was so awesome that you didn't care what came before it. So for my scene, I'm going to go to, by the way, have we gotten any of the deleted scenes for Rise of Skywalker release yet? I don't think we have. No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because I didn't know if they were buried somewhere in the Blu-ray player, but I didn't see them. But anyway, for me, I'm going to go to Force Awakens and Chewbacca ripping up Unkar Splutt's arm in Takodana. It's a small moment. It's not plot heavy, and there's every reason why you cut it, because it has nothing to do. You don't need it. It lends nothing, but just the idea of, because basically what happens is Unkar Plutt, the character that Simon Pegg played, tracks down Rey to Takodana and confronts her and tells her she's in so much trouble and he's gonna own her forever, that kind of thing. And Chewie, disarms her, and Chewie steps in to protect her, and Unkar starts talking trash to Chewbacca, and then Chewbacca does what a Wookiee does really well, and just steps on him and pulls at his arm until it comes off.
Well, we got that payoff in Solo.
Well,
Yeah.
So
that's just it. I know we saw it in Solo, but I just think it would have been so perfect, because first of all, it's showing you that Rey it's building kind of a tribe, so to speak. It's building people around her to support her, and I'm just imagining everybody just squealing and screaming at the sight of Chewie just ripping up somebody's arms after that threat got introduced 40 some odd years prior.
All right. Well, those are our favorites. Dave, do you want to start any? You said you had some honorable mentions, maybe some dishonorable mentions.
Yeah, I liked. I think, I don't know if we've ever seen it. I don't even know if they've ever filmed it, but there was always the rumors of an extended Darth Maul Qui-Gon battle on Tatooine.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that. That fight is very abbreviated. You get the general gist, but watching a couple of Jedi and Sith in their prime, like flipping around and swinging lightsabers at each other, I would have been for it.
I I read it in the novelization, Dave, because I know it's, and I think they filmed a little bit of it, where basically Maul, when Qui-Gon jumps onto the ramp, Maul chases him, and they end up fighting there for a brief spell, and then
Yeah,
Qui-Gon shoves him back, and I was
It's,
waiting for that moment.
it's actually there's incomplete scenes that were released on the Blu-ray. This is on Wikipedia. It says the
Okay.
extended or the battle on the boarding ramp, extended fight with Darth Maul on Tatooine, including Darth Maul jumping onto the ship's platform with Qui-Gon before falling off. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I would have loved that. I think it would have been, again, unnecessary, but
we've
Would have
been
been-
waiting for 15 years to see lightsabers. I would have eaten it up. Yeah.
yeah, that was our payoff moment. Like I remember watching the movie for the first time. I'm like, that's it. And yeah, so that would have been given us a little bit more prior to Duel of the Fates at the end. And then another thing from that video that I liked, that we've referenced a couple times here, Kylo and the weird critter on Mustafar in Rise of Skywalker, the so-called like keeper of the Wayfinder.
Oh, the spider baby.
Yes. Like I'm not sure how I felt about the prosthetics and the pictures that it surfaced about all that, but like, dude sold me on it. I would have loved to have seen that.
It would have created a good dynamic of displaying how, even though Kylo Ren is the most powerful Sith and the supreme leader, in some ways he's getting rejected by the OG Sith. He's wearing their colors, he's repping their game, but they're not saying, "Oh, you're not one of us," which is an interesting dynamic for him because they're opposing him.
It's really weird too when you think about that, like the whole Rise of Skywalker plot line of Rey becoming Palpatine's, successor or whatever. It's like you got this guy, he rules the galaxy. He's the offspring of Anakin Skywalker. What's the problem? But I guess Kylo wasn't good enough.
So what about deleted scenes that thank God they deleted them? I'll start this round just real quick, and that is Anakin's fight with Little Greedo.
Oh, yes.
That would have been, come on, man. I mean, everybody's already, it was like, really? Anakin, Darth Vader made C-3PO? All right. And then it's like, oh, really? We got Anakin fighting Greedo. It's like Dallas. Everybody's related, type of thing. So thank God that was left out. I mean, yeah, that's one of mine.
I agree. I really didn't like the extended hijinks on Grievous's ship at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. They had some alternate takes and some additional scenes.
Really Scooby-Doo-ish. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't need more of that.
You mean when Anakin's like going like beeping and booping like a droid?
Yeah. Oh God. And then there was like Shaak Ti was inserted in one scene at one point for no reason whatsoever. None of it made any sense. I'm glad it all.
Yeah, originally Shaak Ti gets kidnapped by Grievous and killed by Grievous.
Yeah.
And they went back and changed it to make it that Anakin kills Shaak Ti, which actually also ended up as a deleted scene.
Anakin didn't kill Shaak Ti.
I believe she did when he attacks the temple.
No.
Oh, she was in the temple, huh?
Well, that's the thing. I think that was the second plan. I think they both ends of Shaak Ti get removed from the movie. At first, it was Grievous supposed to kill her. They take it down. Then
I've seen that. I've seen that scene. Yeah.
Right. No, it's. I think both end up getting deleted. So it's something where they had a plan to kill her and they just never did. So I was going to say in terms of an honorable mention. There was actually where is it? I'm trying to remember. Actually, no, I'll skip the honorable mention. I'll say the big one that I think I'm glad they cut is Tashi Station, which we haven't talked about yet.
I would agree with you, and that's probably a controversial one because everybody's like, there are big scenes. We all grew up with these
Mhm.
these
'Cause every-
scenes we all saw and swore to God was in the original release that never was.
Every Star Wars book and magazine that came out between 77 and 80 had all those still images of Luke talking to Biggs, Luke looking through his viewfinder, looking at the battle above,
Yep.
wearing the poncho, wearing the hat. So we all think we saw it, but in some ways, looking back there, sometimes you go like, well, you're not impacting the pace. This is one instance where the pace really would have been impacted by adding all those scenes.
Yeah, it would have
Yeah,
been
very
just
much.
so slow.
Mhm.
The other one I wanted to mention was C-3PO's trick. I think that's what they called it at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, where he rips the sign off the door, and apparently there's they've got wampas stored
Yeah.
in the base for some reason. That again, they don't really explain that. It's a funny little thing, but I think it would have interrupted the flow.
Well, you would have had to have the scene where the Wampas invade the base, and that looks
Right.
awful. It
Yeah.
looks horrible. Everything they did with the Wampa, except for in the special edition, or just the shot of the face that they did in the original movie. That was the only good stuff with the Wampas. But when they invaded the base, it just looked bad. So yeah, it would have made no sense to have 3PO rip off the sign. If he didn't know Wampas were in there. But yeah, you're right. It's just kind of goofy.
I mean, if it's a goofy moment, you get a Snowy opening the door, a white arm coming out, grabbing him by the head, dragging him in. The door closes, and the other two guys behind him are like, "What the heck?" And that's it. It's very much as a beat from a comedy movie. Like it looks better.
And I think that might have gone over, across the line with Irvin Kershner saying I needed humor without gags, and that kind of is a gag.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, like I said, I think it's tough to argue with. Another one that I think is an honorable mention is the one in Return of the Jedi when the Emperor gives Jerjerrod or whatever, however pronounce his name, the order to blow up the moon. And he said, we have battalions down there, we have our people down there. And it's like, too bad, so sad. And it's that it gets into that conflict of, you're given an order when you're in the military. Do you have a moral obligation to, ignore a bad order? But I think that would have just, as much as I think that would have been cool, it would have taken you into you just would have gone off into a tangent and forgotten about, the other stuff that was going on, and had to contemplate that, like, yeah, should people ignore orders? Then, oh crud, they just blew up the Death Star. So
Right. Because they cut it in between the space battle, and at that moment, really looking at one dude thinking, pondering ethical dilemmas is not really what you want to see as TIE fighters and X-Wings are flying through the superstructure of the Death Star.
I'm sorry, it also kind of sticks out, like it would have stuck out like a sore thumb, because the Empire was all about following orders. Nobody disobeyed the orders. So anyway, go ahead, Fredo.
Now, I was going to say the other moment from Jeddah that I wish I had put in honorable mention was when Vader flies back from the Super Star Destroyer to tell the Emperor that Luke is on Endor, and Jerjerrod confronts him at the door saying, and like all smug, like, you're not supposed to be here. And Vader just chokes him, moves him out the way, and just walks in. It's a small beat, but I love those little moments that kind of hint at his relationship with the Imperial officers, because that then leads to when the Palpatine tells Vader, "I told you to wait on the command ship." And you're like, okay, so you don't need it, but it's just, I always love little moments like that kind of show the contempt that a lot of the Imperial officers have for Vader, and the fact that it's returning kind, that he doesn't care for it either.
All right. Well, that was a kind of a fun trip down memory lane. So if you have your favorite deleted scenes, or scenes that you're, say, thank the maker that they left out, let us know on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever, either Who Dat Jedi podcast official feeds, or either one of us, just if you follow us personally. We'll always take a few minutes to talk Star Wars during the day. It happens on the reg. So that's right. I just said on the reg. Yeah, Lucy just barked at me for, being kind
That's
of
right.
douchey there. So
As well as you should. As well as you
yeah,
should.
as well as you should. But you can find us, our podcast, on Podbean, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And yeah, I think that's about all the places you can find us. By the way, on just a side note, I am excited about the Mario games that are coming out. I think we mentioned that earlier. But like I said, I'm really getting quite addicted to my Switch. But Dave, I saw, were you playing the original Punch-Out?
Oh yeah. I finally beat the silly thing.
I guess that I will never forget. I'll never forget when I actually beat Mike Tyson in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. It was like 7:30 in the morning, and I'd woken up I remember sitting there on the ottoman playing it, and I beat him, and I screamed. I'm sure I woke up everybody in the house because I gotta beat Mike Tyson. So yeah, Dave. Twitter.
Yeah, my wife was on a work call, so I was like, I gotta be like silently screaming, but very much the same reaction internally, because it's such a relief if you're ever able to pull that off, because it's one of those video game feats that just, it's like pie in the sky. Is it ever gonna happen? And it finally happened for me at the age of 43.
There you go. There you go. So hope everybody's finding ways to, like us, to keep yourselves sane during this pandemic. And I hope you all have a great long weekend. I hope you're able to have a great long weekend. It's a holiday on Monday. If you don't have to work, enjoy the day. If you have to work, I'm sorry. Maybe come down with something and call in. Who knows? But until then, we will see you next week. And until then, we'll say who dat?
Who dat?
And sign Alvin Kamara, please, Sean Payton. But we will talk to you guys next week.
McClunky.